The Army Chief General Bipin Rawat today criticised violence during the protests over the citizenship law, saying leaders are not those who lead masses in arson and violence. He was immediately called out for taking sides while still occupying an office that must be neutral and apolitical. General Rawat, who is due to retire on the 31st of December, has spoken out for the first time against the massive nationwide protests against the Citizenship Act.
Leaders are not those who lead people in inappropriate directions, as we are witnessing in a large number of university and college students, the way they are leading masses of crowds to carry out arson and violence in our cities and towns. This is not leadership. A leader is one person who leads you in the correct direction, gives you the right advice, and then ensures that you care for the people you lead.
Is an army chief, or for that matter, any serving armed forces officer, allowed to make remarks linked to a political issue?
You see, it is not a question of being allowed. According to the Army Act, you are not supposed to, as a serving officer of any serving Indian Armed Forces personnel, cannot communicate with the press directly without permission, and in any case should not make any comments which are political in nature. So I don't think it was appropriate for him to make these comments.
And General, do you believe that this is part of a larger concern on politicization of the army? Because the Eastern Army Commander has also made some remarks in the last couple of days.
Yeah, it would appear so, but this is not the first comment made by General Bipin Rawat, which has got a political color to it. And yes, it is unsettling that senior army officers are making comments which are political in nature. And it's not so much that the way that the civil population would look at it, but the way in which the serving personnel would look at it. That's much more serious.
Well, the Army Chief General Bipin Rawat today criticised violence during protests over the citizenship law, saying leaders are not those who lead masses in arson and violence. He was immediately called out for taking sides while still occupying an office that must be neutral and apolitical. General Rawat is due to retire on the 31st of December. He has spoken for the first time against the massive nationwide protests against the Citizenship Act.
Leaders are not those who lead people in inappropriate directions, as we are witnessing in a large number of university and college students, the way they are leading masses of crowds to carry out arson and violence in our cities and towns. This is not leadership. A leader is one person who leads you in the correct direction, gives you the right advice, and then ensures that you care for the people you lead.
Well, joining us now, Admiral Lakshminarayan Ramdas, the former Navy Chief. He joins us from Alibag in Maharashtra. Thank you very much, Admiral, for speaking to us. Do you believe that General Rawat's comments were part of the politicization of the armed forces?
No, my views on this have been amply clarified regarding the armed forces having to steer well out of domestic politics, because it is none of our business to make any comments on whatever has been happening. And as far as I'm concerned, my views have also been expressed regarding the two CAB and NRC, etc. As members of the Magsaysay Award group, quite a few of us have signed and sent our views on this as well, where we don't agree with what is going on. And now I feel that, although I don't want to say anything directly against it, but frankly, how can we ever say anything about the students? Students is the is the crucible where our future leaders are born and future leaders are trained to become what they are. And this pontification about leadership and as being only right, and unless you have evidence, how can you say who's leading them and why are they going this way? For example, I've seen some and spoken to many people who say they are very unhappy about all this that's going on. The attack by the police on innocent students in the library. Today's student of about, even if he joins at the age of 5, class 1, he finishes 12 by the time he's 17. In 3 years, if he becomes a graduate at 20, and then an MSc and an MA, 22, and then he does another 5 years.
Right.
And the same thing is there, whether it's a man or a woman. This is the same. And the women have shown that they are really leaders in many, many ways.
Right. And so, therefore, Admiral, if we can just stick to what General Rawat had to say and the real concern that the most apolitical institution in India, the Indian Army, the Indian Armed Forces, when you have two senior leaders in 1 week making these remarks today, General Rawat, a few days back, the Eastern Army commander, is that not a violation of the Army Rules 1954?
You see, normally the armed forces, it applies to all the 3 services, do not pass any comments on to the public and media unless they are required to do so, and also on specific occasions like Army Day, Navy Day, and so on, or any special function. And we are supposed to be an armed forces owing our allegiance to the Supreme Commander and the Constitution. So we should stay clear of politicizing. In fact, I made a letter to the Chief Election Commissioner, projecting my unfortunate views at that time from their point of view. But from my point of view, it's none of our business to do this when we are particularly when you're in service and holding a chair.
Right. Admiral, Article 21 of the Army Rules 1954, which superseded the Army Act of 1950, says, and I quote, "No person subject to the Act shall publish in any form whatever or communicate directly or indirectly to the press any matter in relation to a political question." Later it says, "without the prior sanction of the central government." Do you believe that the Army Chief may have the sanction of the political leadership to be making these remarks?
I'm not privy to it. If those are the rules, they must be followed. Simple.
And so when you were Navy Chief, tell us how these rules were an oath on the basis of which you operated. You don't break these rules.
That's right. In fact, when we are chief, we take an oath and before we take over, so that we are not only just the chief of the service, we are also custodians of our own actions. And therefore, it's important that we ourselves stick to the way you're expected to be a good leader. Simple.
All right. Well, Admiral Ramdas, it's always an honor to speak to you. Thank you very much for speaking about your concerns about military leaders making politically linked remarks, if I can use those words. Thank you very much.
We are an apolitical system and we must remain so.